So the next issue, this is something that kind of came up in our committee, and thank you, Representative Novotny, for bringing this forward, and you had some concerns. And I hopefully will address those concerns, Representative Novotny, here today. So first up, we're gonna be talking about the University of Minnesota and an outstanding community partner award that they had given. But before we get into the testimony, because of some disturbances we've had here in committee, in the House of Representatives, I do need to go through some ground rules. So in these committees, we expect decorum. We expect the audience to be quiet so that we can conduct our meetings. We'll have no signs, no outbursts, no clapping, and please don't block any of the walkways. If you need something in specific, if you've got a disability, if you would please get a hold of the pages or the sergeants that are in the room. This is a ticketed event, and so you have gotten a ticket in your hand. The tickets are equal numbers of opposition, and so pro and con. So I see the room is filling up, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming and participating. At the very end, we would have an opportunity for public testimony. If you would like to come, we'll do equal time of proponents and opponents, and I'll be giving 2 minutes for each testifier. And we will only go till the time that is allowed because we do have another committee that will be coming into the room. Excuse me, not into the room, we'll be going to a session. So with that, we will move forward in the agenda, and I would invite up the Amber Cameron, the Director of Public Engagement Initiatives Office for Public Engagement from the University of Minnesota. So welcome to the committee. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us more about this Community Partner Award that was issued to communities united against police brutality. And I'm understanding that particular group, they first got an award in 2021, and then they got another award, same group, in 2024. And I will note for the record too, I did look at their IRS determination letter, and they just became an organization June 25th of 2020. So between June 25th of 2020, when they officially became an organization, and by 21, they'd already received an award from the University of Minnesota. I will also note that I see on their calendar, on the organization's calendar, that they are right now at this very moment at the University of Minnesota. I guess they're doing a course or something, and that seems to be on their calendar quite a lot. So with that, I will turn it over to you to let us know what exactly was the process of how they got the award and the relationship. I already kind of laid out some of the high level relationship and when they actually became an organization. I do note that the director of this organization has stated in public forums multiple times, multiple places in news conferences that either she or the organization, I couldn't tell which she was referring to, has been around for 25 years. But again, for the record, the organization began in 2020. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Ms. Cameron, and if you would state your name for the record and continue with your testimony. Thank you for being here.
Great. Well, Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Amber Cameron, and I work in the university's Office for Public Engagement. Thank you for your invitation to attend today's hearing and to discuss the University of Minnesota's Public Engagement Awards. The Office for Public Engagement serves all 5 campuses of the university system in supporting the policies, practices, and culture to foster robust work between university faculty, staff, students, and external partners to ensure that the scholarship of the university is made relevant and useful to the public, especially here in Minnesota. Our office supports partnerships with a wide range of external partners. This includes nonprofits, business and industry, grassroots organizations, faith-based organizations, and government. One of the ways that we create a university culture that supports engagement with external stakeholders is through awards programs that recognize the important work that faculty, staff, and students do in partnership with communities. One such award program is the Outstanding Community Service Awards, started in 1999 by then President Brunix to recognize faculty, staff, students, and university-affiliated community members or partners who, by devoting their time, talents, and expertise to serve the public good, have made significant, demonstrable, and direct contributions to society's well-being. In 2006, when our office was established, we were tasked with facilitating the system-wide awards process on behalf of the university. Over the last 25 years of this awards program, community partners from across the state of Minnesota have been recognized, and both individuals and organizations are eligible to apply for the award. Some examples of previous recipients of the Community Partner Award include the Minnesota Lions Hearing Foundation, Mary Page, the former Renville County Commissioner and also co-creator of the Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships, World Without Genocide, Hyla Mays, who was a planner with the city of Minneapolis, David Benson, a former Nobles County Commissioner, the University YMCA, and Jess Bangston, who was the former assistant editor of the Crookston Times. As facilitators of the award process, the Office for Public Engagement solicits nominations for all awards through system-wide publications, including staff, faculty, and student newsletters. This is advertised to all staff and faculty at all 5 of our campuses, receive notification that they are able to nominate for these awards. In addition, units on campus share award information through email lists with external partners. We don't have one list to contact all community partners. Nominations can come from any stakeholder, including faculty, staff, students, or a community member. Nomination packets include a nomination letter describing how the activities of the individual or group was extraordinary, a personal reflection essay or video by the nominee reflecting on how their work has impacted the community and themselves, and supplemental materials such as additional letters of support or articles. Specifically for the community partner nominations, a discussion is required of how the partner has connected with the university. After nominations are received, our office invites university faculty and staff to serve on selection committees to determine the award winner for each category. So we have selection committees for the faculty, staff, student, and community partner awards. The committees are asked to evaluate the application in the following categories. How has the activity affected society in positive ways that foster long-term change? How has the nominee had an innovative approach towards service? How has the nominee produced extraordinary results? And overall, what was the impression of the application? Selection committees are instructed to evaluate the nominee based solely on the application. No outside information or knowledge is incorporated into the process. When only one nomination is received, the nomination must still document how the nominee meets the award criteria. If the nominee does not meet the criteria, the award is not presented that year. The selection committee noted that the Communities United Against Police Brutality Award nomination documented longstanding partnership work with the University of Minnesota, primarily through student learning. As a recent example that was noted in the application, university students collected data and drafted a white paper that led to the passage of Travis's Law, a bipartisan supported bill requiring 911 dispatchers to deflect mental health crisis calls directly to mental health teams. Because of the organization's impact on student learning over the past 2 decades, the selection committee determined that the application fulfilled the award criteria. It should be noted that we are sunsetting this award program, a process that began when the university's newest vice provost for public engagement started at the university in Minnesota in October 2023. 2024 was the last year that the Outstanding Community Service Awards were conferred. Under Vice Provost Van Ingren's leadership, my direct boss, we have developed an awards program that better aligns with the institution's support of community engaged scholarship, that is community engagement tied to research, teaching, and application, rather than simply volunteering. Some of the Outstanding Community Service Award winners did fit into the umbrella of scholarship over the past 25 years, but we wanted to make sure it was consistent so that volunteer service projects were not eligible in order to better fit the mission of the University of Minnesota. The original awards program had 2 lines of awards, the Service Awards and the Engaged Scholar Awards. And the new program is an extensive retooling so that everything fits into the Engaged Scholar Awards, and we've added some new categories such as an Early Career Award and Graduate Student Award. As a result, all awards will be internal to the University of Minnesota to support community engaged scholarship. Madam Chair, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you or other committees members might have.
Thank you for your testimony. I think we do have a question. Representative Novotny.
I do have a question. Could you read the first line of your thing that how the award recipients receive their awards, their evaluation?
Ms. Cameron.
The selection committee evaluation?
Yes.
Ms. Cameron.
Yep. Let me find that. Okay, the committees are asked to evaluate the application in the following categories, that section? Okay. How has the activity affected society in positive ways that foster long-term change? Keep going.
That's the exact phrase I was looking for. Thank
Representative
you.
Novotny.
Thank you, Chair Rarick. That's the exact phrase I was looking for. And one of the reasons, we received a letter from the Communities Against Police Brutality President, Michelle Gross, in response to what I said at the January 16th meeting, where I was just trying to find out and get clarification of this posting that was made. And I'd searched through the University of Minnesota website. I'd gone through grants. We had a grant person here. I was trying to get clarification of that. But interestingly enough, one of the things that I've seen in the many times that Ms. Gross has been to committees and standing with groups protesting outside of our public safety committee room or outside of our chamber, it's the actual letterhead from the Communities Against Police Brutality, which you say you want to select people that have a message of positive change. Their letterhead shows what appears to be just, maybe this is just an ink block test, but it sure looks like it's a representation of what's supposed to be a police officer with a long club beating a person on the ground. And that message would fairly line up with what we have heard from testimony from Ms. Gross and other things that she has seen in other media that I've seen from her in the past. Would you say that the image of a police officer with a long club beating someone on the ground is a positive image?
Ms. Cameron.
Thank you for that question, Representative Novotny. I am not an expert on the work that Communities United does. I've never seen their letterhead. And as I described as our process, I instruct our selection committees just to evaluate nominations as they come in, normally to avoid any type of bias. For example, if someone knows one of the candidates, I need them to be objective in their ability to evaluate packets. And if they're not able to be objective, then they're not, then they need to dismiss themselves from the selection committee. And so my job is to facilitate a process, not to evaluate an organization's work.
Representative Novotny.
That's interesting. Now, if you could clarify for me, how long has this group or Ms. Gross been working and putting on classes at the University of Minnesota?
Ms. Cameron.
I can answer to what was in the nomination materials. I do not myself work with this organization. The nomination documented that the organization has been working since its inception with the University of Minnesota, so for 25 years. They've been working with faculty throughout the campus.
Thank you, Ms. Cameron. And I will come back to you in just a second. So I just want to note again for the record, I do have the IRS determination letter for this nonprofit. They have not been around 25 years, according to the IRS. June 25th of 2020 is when this organization formally became a nonprofit. Now, she may have individually been doing things, but they were not an organization recognized by the government until 2020. And I will also note for the record, this is their letterhead, and it is as was described. This is a police officer beating a person, and if you look at their title, their name, Communities Against Police Brutality. And as you describe it, that this organization, which didn't exist until 2020, according to the letter, has had a relationship with the University of Minnesota, whether it's a teaching or collaboration or whatever word we want to use, for 25 years. Do you see where we're confused? Ms. Cameron.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate your question, Madam Chair. As I referenced in my comments, especially for the Community Partner Award, this can go to any individual, grassroots organization, group of citizens. There's no requirement that there's a legal tax status affiliated with an organization to receive the award. We have many examples over the last 25 years where it's been small groups of people working on issues, like, for example, the work happening with Mary Page and others in rural communities. those are not formal organizations either, so that's never been a requirement of the award.
Okay. Representative Novotny, back to you.
One last question. You say work with. What is your understanding of what this work with is? What does work with mean? Are they leading classes? Are they putting on seminars? What does work with mean when it comes to this organizations? And I might also point out, Chair Rarick, that not only is their name on the letterhead, that's apparently trademarked. So what does this trademarked group work with University of Minnesota on?
Ms. Cameron.
Thank you for that question, Representative. I can speak to what was documented in the application process. There might be other ways in which the organization works with the university. This is primarily work, the documented work was through what's called the Center for Community Engaged Learning. This center works with faculty and instructors across the entire Twin Cities campus, supporting students working externally as part of their coursework. And so in this application, they documented the number of courses and academic departments that faculty have engaged, have provided this opportunity to students to be engaged through their courses. Most often in those course offerings, students are given a range of organizations that they can work with, a list, and then they select the organization that they are most interested in working with as part of their course.
Representative Novotny.
Thank you. And I just ask these questions because I'll go back to when my youngest daughter was looking at schools, and she was offered a fairly substantial scholarship to play a sport at one of the Minnesota colleges. And in her discipline that she wanted to go into, we walked through the building where her professors and teachers had their offices. And during that tour, I noticed that almost every door of every teacher and every professor in that hallway had doors covered with, I can only describe as the most vile, anti-cop, anti-Semitic, anti-conservative, anti-Republican pictures and posters and cartoons. And it was at that my point, this is long before I got into politics, but I was working in law enforcement at the time. We left and I told my daughter, I said, look, if you go to that school, if they find out who your dad is, they will either crush you or you'll have to hide about who you really are and how you really feel. 2 weeks later, we went to an outstate college and walked through the same disciplines hallways. There was not one thing on one door that indicated any political belief or anything like that. And she chose to go to that school, and I'm glad she did, because she was able to express herself in a way that was free of a predetermined way that she would have to think to be able to pass her classes. My concern is if this is what is being held up as not just, you can freely associate. If you want to go and hear some group talk, I think, I believe that you should be able to freely associate, even if it is a group that they might not agree with my belief of how I see their organization, but being on the receiving end of some of their members in the hallways of this building, I know how I feel about them. A student at the university should be able to explore that. We're holding them up as something that this is we're giving them an award for that. That's the part that I'm just baffled by, that this is being held up as someone we should look to. Have there been issues with excessive use of force in law enforcement? Absolutely. Have there been great strides made? Absolutely. Will there always need to be changes made? Absolutely. But holding up a group that is dwelling in, I can only describe as an extremist, non-productive, and sure as heck not a positive change. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Novotny. We're going to move on to Representative Scott. And before I give you the floor, I do want to note for the public record that Michelle Gross from the Communities United Against Police Brutality was invited to come, and she did send the letter that we're referencing in lieu of that. I believe she is at the University of Minnesota right now doing a presentation or a class or something, and then a press conference, something like that. So that was what her schedule said. Okay, so I'm being told she was at St. Thomas. In any case, she is teaching or engaging or something at this moment, and then I know at 2 o'clock she has a press conference. So she's doing that instead of being here answering questions, and that's fine. She sent a letter, so we have that, but I will move on to Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was also interested in the 4 criteria that you read off for deciding who the recipients of the awards would be. And you indicated results. And so I'm wondering if you could elaborate on the results. Were they measurable? But elaborate on the results that were achieved by this organization.
Ms.
Yes.
Cameron?
Thank you, Representative Scott. Thanks for that question. Yes, I'm happy to at least speak to what was in the award nomination materials. So there were definitely documentation of the extent to which this organization has worked across many areas of the university. The letter, the nomination letter included information that the organization has worked with 130 course offerings over the last 24 years, representing 26 different courses across 17 academic departments. As a result, about 1,000 students have participated in some way with the organization through these courses. The nomination materials also documented, as I mentioned, the Travis Law that was passed a few years ago. They noted the times when students have been working on documenting through research and through policy writing development, things such as Travis Law, and playing a role in preparing those materials for consideration at the state capitol.
Representative Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So who vets the courses that this organization was rolling out to students?
Ms. Cameron?
Oh, yeah, sorry, apologies. Thank you, Representative Scott. I do not know the intimate details of how courses are designed or administrated or at the university. That's not part of our office's purview. But the provost office, I can bring that question back to the provost office for clarification on how courses are developed.
Okay.
Representative Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And what were, another criteria I think that you mentioned was an innovative approach. And so could you tell me what their innovative approaches were based on the application?
Yes, I'm happy to
Cameron.
speak to that as well, Representative Scott. The innovative approaches that the reviewers noted in their documentation was really the ways that they have brought students in as leaders and as people who are learning the legislative process through the organization. So the innovative process is using opportunities to help students learn how bills are drafted, how you move as a citizen, those informations into kind of the capital proceedings, and how to effectively collect data that is relevant to help legislators make informed decisions.
Ms. Cameron, does that include getting a busload of students to go up to the majority leader of the Senate's business and protesting in front of his business?
Thanks for
Cameron.
that question, Madam Chair. I am not familiar with what you're referencing, and so I can't speak to that. I
Thank you, Ms.
apologize.
Cameron. So what happened is this group loaded a busload full of U of M students and went up to Paul Gazelka, then Senate Majority Leader Gazelka's business, and protested in front of his business because they didn't like what he was doing. Little different than coming here and voicing your concerns in a committee hearing. Representative Scott, are you have more?
Just,
Representative
thanks,
Scott.
Madam Chair, and I'll just sort of wrap up here, but it sounds to me like their innovative approach is activism. And so that was being part of the curriculum, is what it sounds like to me, based on that application. I'm wondering, Madam Chair, and to the testifier, would we be able to get copies of that application and all the materials that went into making that decision?
Ms. Cameron?
Thank you, Representative Scott. I can bring that question back to my provost, and we can get back to you with how we would release that information.
And I
Representative Scott?
thank you, Madam Chair. I'd be glad to make a formal data practices request if that's necessary. But yeah, please let us know how you'd like to handle that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Scott. Representative Robbins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Cameron, for being here. I have a couple lines of questions. First, when they got the award, they said in the letter that we received that there was a nominal financial prize, but they have not received it. What is that financial prize amount, and when or will they receive it?
Ms. Cameron?
Thank you, Representative Robbins. The financial award for the Community Partner Award is $5,000. And according to our accountants, that's getting processed. Normally, it happens in the next academic year, so it's getting processed this academic year.
Representative Robbins?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that answer. So where do those funds come from in the university budget?
Ms. Cameron?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. As I understand it, it comes from O&M funding. But beyond that, I'm not sure how the funds were determined in 1999 to be used that way.
Representative Robbins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. So I would like to know how much of the OMN budget goes for awards like this through this Community Engagement Award Program, historically and also for the current academic year. So if you could get me that information, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Representative Robbins. We can, and maybe the two of you can work on a data request together so we have it nice and formal, and we will submit that as well. Representative Robbins?
Thank you. And then tied to that award, I'm assuming there was, she mentions an award ceremony. Was there any letter read or congratulations from the university, a formal statement from the university in presenting this award? If so, I'd like to hear what you said about this group.
Ms. Cameron?
Thank you for the question. So there's a multi-part to this, to my response to your question. First is, yes, we had an award ceremony that our office hosted in December of this year to celebrate the 2024 awardees. Information that I shared today was really what was shared, and there's a video that was made about the work that they do, and so I feel like that captured what was said. So that's on public viewing on our website. In addition to that, the University of Regents has a list of awards in which they celebrate accomplishments across the university system. That's held in May every year. And so the Outstanding Community Service Award since 1999 has been part of that program. And so these awards were recognized in May at the Board of Regents meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Cameron. I would note, too, that that video is beautifully produced, and it looks like it's a fairly expensive video. It's a pretty high quality, so maybe we could find out how much it costs to produce the video as well. Representative Robbins?
Thank you. And so if there was any sort of formal statement congratulating them or acknowledging what they're given the award for, could you send that as well?
Ms. Cameron?
Yes, I'd be happy to get those speaking notes.
Representative Robbins?
Sorry, this will be my last question. Thank you, Madam Chair. So you also referenced the Center for Community Engaged Learning, and that's now the place where all these courses were, and students had the opportunity to choose from a menu of courses and engage with a menu of outside groups that they could choose to work with. I'm assuming then they got credit for doing volunteer work with these different groups?
Ms. Cameron?
Yes, thank you for the question. So at the university, we have what we call community engaged learning, and as part of a decades-long work in higher education, it's one of the high impact practices to connect university students with practical work. So this could include internships, capstone projects with outside organizations, work with business and industry. And so, yes, through many of the courses that the Center for Community Engaged Learning works with, students receive academic credit as part of their course to fulfill learning requirements. but it's tied often to reflection and course content. It's always tied to course content.
Representative Robbins?
Thank you. So I would love to get a list of the courses that are involved in this community engaged learning, and also a list of all of the different potential experiences or internship opportunities that the students can choose from.
Ms. Cameron?
We can work on assembling that.
Thank you.
Good, okay. Representative Scott?
Thanks, Madam Chair. And if I didn't make it clear before, I'm just curious about the vetting process for both the award winners or any of the applicants, and then the vetting process that goes into any of these partnerships that you have where these students, where it would fall under this community involvement or whatever you named it. I think that we owe it to the parents of these students who are footing the bill for their education to get a little more information on what their students are being exposed to. So if that could be part of our request, that'd be great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Scott. Okay, any further questions? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next testifier. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Ms. Cameron, for answering all those questions, and I guess you'll have a few that you'll take with you and bring back. Next up is Silas Simpson, the Vice President of Interfraternity Council of University of Minnesota. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record
Silas Simpson.
and continue with your testimony. Thank you so much for being here.
All right. Hello, all. I'd like to first express my gratitude for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Silas Simpson, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the University of Minnesota Interfraternity Council. Our president, unfortunately, is unable to attend today's hearing, so I'll be reading a statement on his behalf about campus safety and the university's partnership with UMPD. Our experience with UMPD over the past few years has been nothing but positive. Last March, UMPD took over the jurisdiction of the strip between University Avenue Southeast and 4th Street Southeast from the 35W exit to Huntington Bank Stadium, where many of our fraternity chapter houses are located. During this time, our chapters have seen quicker response times to 911 calls, more support for hosting safe events, and observed a more prevalent police presence. UMPD and the university have also supported many of our chapters on a more personal level, dealing with safety concerns specific to our community. The university's many efforts within our community have seen great results, such as their newly opened UMPD Resource Center in Dinkytown, their several camera towers posted along streets with high foot traffic, and the visibility of officers being increased late into the night. We are incredibly grateful for UMPD's support, but a more prominent police presence is not the only thing we believe can be done to make our campus and Greek community safer. Other improvements, like increased lighting, could make a significant difference for our members and the entire student body. That is the main priority of our community, ensuring the safety and well-being of our members and guests. We believe that through strengthening our relationship with UMPD over the last few years, that our community has become much safer. We will continue to value any further opportunities to increase UMPD's presence with us and our broader campus community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson, so much for coming and bringing that information and that perspective from the students' side and what's happening on the campus. Any questions for this testifier? Representative Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this might actually be a question for you as our lead on higher ed over the last few years. But I believe, didn't we allocate a lot of money for additional lighting on campus? And maybe I'll ask you that, and then to the testifier, just see if he's noticed an increase in that, more lighting on campus. Is there still more needed? Because I know that's an issue you and I have talked a lot about is safety on campus.
Yes, Representative Scott, we did, and I see our wonderful nonpartisan fiscal staff is looking at the spreadsheet, so I'll give him a moment. I'll just kind of talk into the mic as he's looking for the number. I have a number in my head, but it doesn't mean it's right. And we did give quite a bit of money specifically to enhance public safety on the campus because we collectively at the legislature were incredibly concerned about the stories and the crime statistics. Quite frankly, the crime statistics were skyrocketing year after year after year, violent crimes. And so we at the legislature, as you know, Representative Scott, were incredibly concerned about that. And you and I and others, including Representative Novotny and others, have advocated very loudly for increased presence of both Minneapolis Police and UMPD so that it would deter crime and more lighting and all of the above. And so I know myself and Senator Rarick and a few others went on a safety walk to see really what was happening, and it was quite enlightening. I would encourage us to do that again. Maybe not in January when it's quite so cold, but we can go another time that's when it gets a bit warmer. But I think one of the most powerful stories that we heard was from one of the UMPD officers. And he told us the story of how he had stopped an assailant with a knife from stabbing a student and wrestled him down and got cut himself and apprehended him and stopped him from attacking a student brutally and brought him to, Hennepin County Jail to process. And unfortunately, Mary Moriarty decided to not continue with charges, even though he was injured himself. So you have, as you know, and those that are law enforcement in the room know that there's multiple things that could have been charged, but none of those things were charged. But the end result was this officer who was on a bike at the time, so he was doing bike patrol, had said to us, well, why would I do this job when I know that when I put my life on the line and I apprehend somebody and take this dangerous weapon away from them and nothing happens to them? And so I think if anything comes out of today, we want to thank law enforcement for what they do. We want to encourage those that are county attorneys to actually prosecute crime. And maybe things will change. So I think, if anything, if the University of Minnesota had a voice that said, you know what, we would like crime to be prosecuted, that would be helpful. Because right now, instead, we have this focus on groups like this that we will hear in a little bit, the disparaging comments that have been made against law enforcement that are just trying to keep the public safe. So over to Mr. Savory. Did I talk long enough so you have the information? Mr. Savory, our wonderful nonpartisan fiscal.
Madam Chair and members, there was an appropriation in the previous 2023 omnibus higher education bill for $10 million for the FY 24-25 biennium of $10 million. The base for that appropriation into this current budget year is $2 million for the 26-27 biennium.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Savory. So yes, that was a number ahead of my head of $10 million specifically to enhance public safety. And of course, they could use it in a variety of ways, but one of the ways that we did discuss was specifically lighting. Representative Novotny?
Thank you, Chair Rarick. Mr. Simpson, I've been to the University of Minnesota campus a couple of times. I've got a friend that's active down there and have met with a couple of the regents doing walking around tours in the day and at night. And as then I've been a recently retired law enforcement officer and using my ability to carry a concealed weapon, there were still areas that I was concerned where I was at on campus and just off campus. How do you feel about walking around campus and safety-wise? And remind me again when you answer, how long have you been there and have you seen any changes?
Mr. Simpson?
So I'm in my third year right now, and I can say that the U of M's partnership with UMPD has definitely improved safety since the partnership began.
Representative Novotny, good. Well, that is good to hear. We're heading in the right direction. So Representative Scott, did you have a follow-up?
I was just going to ask the testifier, thank you, Madam Chair, if he'd seen some progress, and it sounds like he has, but have you seen progress in the area of lighting? I know that was one of the things you mentioned. Have you seen an increase in that on campus?
Mr.
Yes, I
Simpson?
have, but it's a large area.
Yeah, it
There's
is.
always work to do.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Scott, any other questions for this very young, brave testifier to come forward? We do appreciate it when students come to testify, so thank you very, very much. And speaking on literally the behalf of your council, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Next, we have Erin Brum, and she is from the University of Minnesota Campus Safety Coalition. And as you come up, we are so grateful that there is a safety coalition. And when we did our safety walk, we did it in conjunction with the Safety Coalition. I've had conversations with the coalition as it was forming and as it's moved forward. So Ms. Brum, thank you so much. Please introduce yourself to the committee and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for having me here today. My name is Erin Brum, and I am on the Board of Directors for the Campus Safety Coalition. We are a nonprofit that founded 2.5 years ago. We're a group of community members, parents, students. We're now 2,000 strong. The board is only 6, but we've grown quite a bit over the last 2.5 years. We set up our nonprofit to work cross-functionally with the University of Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, the city of Minneapolis, and the police departments that service the University of Minnesota. And I really, again, I appreciate the opportunity to get in front of you. I want to spend my time focusing on the partnership that we have with the University of Minnesota and the 2 police departments, again, that service the University of Minnesota. I have many notes, so bear with me. Over the last 2.5 years, a lot of things have changed. When we founded our nonprofit, things were messy, and I'm using that is a good word. It was messy. We've come a long way in 2.5 years. I really hope that the students are seeing that. So a lot have graduated, a lot of parents. We have a lot of new parents that are part of our group. They express concerns all of the time, but things seem to be getting better. And I think the credit, a large amount of that credit needs to go to UMPD and MPD. We don't hear enough about the wonderful things that these people do night and day to protect our families and our community. Frankly, I don't understand that. I don't like it. That's why I took time off work today to come speak to you today. I have 9 quick points that I want to talk about very briefly, and these are the initiatives that we've worked on and we've been a party to over the last 2.5 years. First and foremost, a campus safety advisory committee was formed around 2 years ago. It's a cross-functional group of stakeholders that are concerned with public safety around the University of Minnesota. That group meets every month, and that's been very good. It's a good opportunity to debrief and speak to everyone who is engaged in public safety. Specifically over the last year, when about a year ago, crime was really escalating, violent crime, to very concerning amounts. University of Minnesota Police Department added extra hours and overtime. A lot of overtime. Every weekend, overtime to protect the students in the community. UMPD also increased jurisdiction. Mr. Simpson talked to that briefly. I can't impress how important that was to help get extra officers covering. I mean, we all know what the numbers are with MPD. It is critical to have presence out on those streets, especially at 2 a.m. It was around Halloween that we had a shootout in front of Frank and Andrea's. It didn't receive very much news. I think maybe one news story, and that was it. There were students everywhere around at 2 a.m., like there is on the weekends. Unacceptable and scary. But we had police there, I think it was in like 2 minutes, which is phenomenal. Had they not had this extra jurisdiction in that coverage, that probably would not have been the case. It was a very scary weekend, I'll tell you that for sure. So about a year and a half to 2 years ago, we were working with the University of Minnesota to get more secure door entrances. There was an unfortunate situation that there was a deceased individual in one of the buildings. We couldn't figure out how that could happen, but we worked with the University of Minnesota. We were very loud advocates in locking down some of those buildings, and the U was very responsive, and they've done that, which is phenomenal. The Off-Campus Safety Center opened up just a couple months ago. We were there for the grand opening, and we've also done a hefty donation to help fund the safety center. It's phenomenal. It's an opportunity to get more presence, to have people there, to do community safety. It's been wonderful so far. That's what we've been hearing. UMPD is also helping cover 911 calls, which is really important. I think what we've heard from students, that students have reluctance to call 911 because, well, various reasons, but it's good that UMPD, which are the officers that the students are used to, they see day in, day out, they are also covering those calls as well as continued service from MPD. The university security has become more visible, especially in the last year. which is very good, and they just took over the Gopher chauffeur, which is good because they will have additional hours to provide rides for students, and they're using the University Safety Center as a hub. So I think that's phenomenal. And I actually was able to get some stats today, this is late breaking. Now there are 12 CSOs with UMPD, that's up from 5, so they were able to get an additional 7 officers, which is great. And now they're at 63 sworn officers, and 3 started today. And I think everyone knows recruitment and retention in law enforcement is very difficult, so to see the numbers go positive is great, and I think that's a testament to the police department and their leadership, and also with the University of Minnesota, obviously. I referenced the chauffeur, I referenced the Safety Advisory Committee, so I've hit a lot of these, and I don't want to drain them, because Mr. Simpson alluded to a few of these as well, but it's really, really important to us as a board to communicate how important the law enforcement and those relationships in conjunction with the city and the University of Minnesota, that those relationships stay strong, that we continue to nurture those, because things in Minneapolis are tricky. I don't know that they're getting better. I have my own opinions, but that's not for today. It's just really important that we thank the people that are keeping our community and our families safe. Thank you.
Ms. Rum, thank you. I have a question from Representative Robbins.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Brum, and thank you for this update. I had followed some of the work of the Campus Safety Coalition and the formation of the Campus Safety Center, so I'm thrilled to see that, but I'm really glad to hear all these partnerships and the improvement on campus. I had a constituent who is a student at the University of Minnesota who was carjacked, and a different one who was assaulted. And so these issues are near and dear to my district and to the families who send their kids to the university from Maple Grove. And I hear about it a lot. So to hear this great report of how much things have improved, I can tell you how thrilled I am. So thank you. And I know your group is all volunteer and has worked so hard to go from a group of parent volunteers to a actual C3 organization, and now to have reached the point of all these partnerships in the Campus Safety Center. I mean, we really appreciate your work and your partnership with the U. They have stepped up. They have really risen to the occasion. And it's to the credit of all of you that our campus safety is improving, and I hope you will continue that work. And if there was still going to be an award that would go to long-term community success, I think was something about affecting society in positive ways that foster long-term change, I would nominate you, because I think you are exemplifying what that award should be about, and we're very grateful for everyone's work. Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for your support.
Representative Robbins, I think everyone on the committee would probably agree with your words. I certainly do. And I was just thinking the exact same thing. If ever we were going to give a community award to a group that's made an impactful change for the positive and really have been engaged and collaborative, it's the Safety Coalition. So thank you. I would think everybody, all the members of this committee probably feel the same. So thank you so much. We appreciate that. And we know that 2.5 years is not a very long time. I mean, you've done yeoman's work in 2.5 years. So thank you on behalf of all of us and the legislature for your work and keeping students safe and most importantly, developing this incredibly great relationship with law enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brum. Thank you so much. Representative Novotny, do you have a question for Ms. Brum?
I just have one question. You mentioned that someone had made a fairly large donation. Was that a foundation or?
It was our group, Campus Safety Coalition.
Okay, it was
Yes.
your group individually, and that's money that you had raised yourselves.
Correct.
Ms. Brum.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Representative Novotny. Any other final questions before we move on? Great, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brum. And next up, we have Richard Painter. Now, he has a lot of titles, but I think for today, today he is here on behalf of the Campus Safety Coalition as well. And I know that you're also a professor at the university and probably wear many, many other hats. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Painter, and please present yourself to the committee, your name, and continue with your testimony.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee, for inviting me here to testify. I am a board member of the Campus Safety Coalition. I am also an employee of the University of Minnesota, as is my wife, Professor Karen Painter. We have been with the University of Minnesota now for almost 18 years, since we came here.
And
from
Mr.
Washington,
Painter, for the
DC.
record, could you just state your name one more time?
Richard Painter, P-A-I-N-T-E-R, Richard Painter. I'm a resident of Mendota Heights, Minnesota, and as I emphasized, a member of the board of the Campus Safety Coalition and an employee of the University of Minnesota. I'd remind my employer that I have my First Amendment rights, and I'm going to express them here today. I've had no difficulties with the law school, but some of the other parts of the university seem to have some difficulties with respecting the free speech of faculty, staff, and students who dissent from the status quo. And part of the status quo we struggle with at the University of Minnesota is safety. Safety not only on our campus, but in the surrounding communities where our students live. We only guarantee housing for freshmen at the University of Minnesota, and we have less student housing than just about every other major university, certainly most of the others in the Big Ten, and students have to find their housing in the areas surrounding the university. Those areas are not safe, and they've become a lot less safe since 2020. Now, we've had some improvements thanks to the work of the University of Minnesota Police Department and a renewed cooperation with the Minneapolis Police Department. But it is still very dangerous around our campus, and we are concerned about that for our own safety, safety of the people we work with, and of our students. We've had gun battles on Fraternity Row, a dead body discovered at Appleby Hall. Only a year or two before the dead body was discovered at Appleby Hall, I was contacted by a custodian who said that an intruder was coming into Appleby Hall, and she called the police, said that she should call the police, and she was told by staff in Appleby Hall that the police were not welcome in Appleby Hall. And then I was told that a retaliatory proceeding was started against this custodian with our Title IX office, apparently for using incorrect pronouns. I don't know what it was, at 1 o'clock in the morning while cleaning other people's feces off their potties. I mean, this is how people are treated who dissent from the anti-police rhetoric in our universities. And the University of Minnesota is not the only one. And we need to focus on this problem because unlike many other universities around the country, we have a very high crime rate right near our campus, and we're not dealing with it. And that's the point of the Campus Safety Coalition. We organized this Campus Safety Coalition to seek meetings with the university officials to try to solve the problem. President Gable refused to meet with us. She called a meeting and then wasn't even there. She was over at Harvard doing something, trying to get another job. Well, fortunately, we have a new university president. And I believe that President Cunningham really means well and wants to turn things around. But we need to recognize we have a serious problem here with campus safety. And the topic of police brutality has come up. And I was one of the first people to speak out after the murder of George Floyd because I was speaking out on this issue before the murder of George Floyd. We need to reform policing in Minneapolis and elsewhere in the United States. Racism cannot be tolerated in policing, neither can police brutality. We cannot tolerate it. But the vast majority of officers who have served in this state put their lives on the line every day for our safety and are well-intentioned, good people. Underpaid, undertrained, understaffed. That's the problem. And I fully concur with the conclusions of the United States Department of Justice in the settlement they reached with the city of Minneapolis, and I hope we can fix the problems. We must, with respect to racism and police brutality, and we must do so in every city and state in this country. But I will also say that anybody who says that we ought to defund the police or abolish the police, anyone who uses that kind of rhetoric is either a criminal or an idiot. And we need to stand firm for the vast majority of people in law enforcement who put their lives on the line for us. I would have given an award to the brave officers of the Minneapolis Police Department and the St. Paul Police Department who we need to help us stay safe on our campus. And I hope we can work together to assure a safer environment for learning. And that's what we ought to be spending our money on, is teaching students and protecting students, rather than a bloated administration, lots of awards going on all over the place, this, that, and the other thing. Let's get back to basics. We're here to educate students and keep them safe. That's the purpose of a university.
Thank you, Mr. Painter. Any questions from the members? Okay, great. Well, I guess you said it all, Mr. Painter.
Thank you very much for having
Thank
me.
you so much. It's always good to have you. Next up, we have Brian Peters, who is the Executive Director of Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, MPPOA. And Mr. Peters, this committee hearing was sort of birthed out of a question that Representative Novotny had posed. And I believe you're kind of in the middle of that question. So I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself to the committee and let us know kind of the situation of how did we get here? How did this group end up with this award, and how does that affect MPPOA and the rank and file officers? Mr. Peters.
Well, thank you, Chair Rarick. Members of the committee, my name is Brian Peters. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association. We represent over 10,500 rank and file police officers across the state of Minnesota, to include Minneapolis PD and U of M PD. I also want to note that I'm an alumni of the University of Minnesota, graduating in 1998. Yes, I'm showing my age a little bit, with a BA in political science and a minor in criminology and social deviance. I want to first tell a personal story because it's been a long time since I attended the University of Minnesota. On a flight back from India, I met a couple that was sending their son to the University of Minnesota. So on the plane, struck up a conversation, and they realized that I was from Minnesota. They said they were going to send their son to the University of Minnesota. They live in Dubai. And so we started talking about the U. They were on their way to Minnesota to check out the campus, and I invited them to show them around, which I did. After that, they asked if I would take care of their son, Kunal, when he was at the University of Minnesota, and I absolutely said yes. So Aman and his wife live in Dubai. Kunal did come to the University of Minnesota. He lived in the apartments across where the old McDonald's was in the Dinkytown area. We'd have him over for Thanksgiving, Christmas, because he had no family here. I started seeing a pattern of violence when I would get a call from him saying, "There's been a shooting outside of my apartment, what do I do?" I started getting phone calls from his parents in Dubai asking what is going on. And I reassured them that the University of Minnesota Police Department is top-notch, and I will make sure Kunal is protected. Eventually, it got too bad for their parents that they pulled Kunal from the University of Minnesota, and he now attends college in Canada. I've also been involved with the Safety Coalition. One of my good friends, former Secret Service Mike Olson, serves on the board. And so I've also known what has been happening at the U of M from a crime standpoint, from an image standpoint, and I've also worked with the Safety Coalition, advising them on what my thoughts are of what are possible solutions. So now I'm here to talk about a little bit about the award that was given to the Communities United Against Police Brutality. A few weeks ago, we saw the U of M, in their own words, give Communities United Against Police Brutality a major award. As the state's largest public safety organization, we feel it is both shocking and inappropriate for the University of Minnesota to partner with an award to this organization. Communities United Against Police Brutality is an extremist organization that spreads misleading and harmful narratives about law enforcement. They create an atmosphere where students are led to believe all police officers are inherently racist, encouraging them to side with criminals instead of supporting law enforcement. So let me provide you some examples of the unprofessional nature of the organization, whose leader is more interested in providing completely false stories to the media. Example number one, I think everyone in this room is familiar with the most recent case with Trooper Ryan Londrigan. I can go into detail if you're not, but I think we all know about this case. The things that I'm going to read to you come off of the social media pages of Communities Against Police Brutality. CUB in their social media posts demand officers involved in the Ricky Cobb and Ryan Londrigan case to be charged, just assuming they're guilty and bad, even without probable cause and even without an investigation. This is a violation of the Constitution, and in addition to leading a false narrative about police. August 2nd, 2023. Why the hell is the Minnesota Department of Public Safety investigating itself? This is a media release from them. And bear with me, this is the longest one I'll read, but I think it's important. When the incident happened on Highway 94, within minutes, this organization got on social media and alleged that Ricky Cobb, who died in this incident, laid on the ground for over 20 minutes without any medical attention from law enforcement and the troopers. If you watch the video, that is completely false. They immediately rendered medical attention to Ricky Cobb. Community United Against Police Brutality joins the demand raised by the Racial Justice Network and others to charge the 3 troopers involved in the brutal killing of Ricky Cobb in the early morning hours of July 31st, 2023. Those troopers made a traffic stop, supposedly for a broken taillight, and we all know, if we watched Colonel Langer when he held his press conference, he showed the video of Mr. Cobb passing the trooper who was stationed on the highway with no taillights. But in their post, they alleged supposedly. No, that was the reason. Mr. Cobb was killed. Their conduct was outrageous and violated the law. So again, August 2nd, 2023, this is just days after July 31st. The investigation had just started and information was coming in. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension has been called to investigate. However, they are part of the same Department of Public Safety under which the Minnesota State Patrol operates. It is completely inappropriate to have one division of the state agency investigating another division of the same agency. That bias is obvious. We demand that an independent use of force investigator with no ties to any part of state government be brought in to investigate this matter. And we echo the demand that these officers be charged now. Again, keep in mind, no investigation, they have constitutional rights. The evidence is damning. These officers engage in excessive, unnecessary force, including deadly force that killed Mr. Cobb and endangered others. Has anyone else in the community engaged in this conduct, they would have already been arrested and charged. The standard for law enforcement officers must be even higher. Another example where Communities Against Police Brutality creates a false narrative referring to police officers as murderers, but the case was dismissed and also the civil case was dismissed. These words are powerful. August 6, 2023. There is no excuse for murderers to remain loose in our community. They did a call to action, call Governor Walz and demand he fire the state patrol officers that killed Ricky Cobb. Another example uses explicit language to describe someone who was convicted specifically to anti-cop fear and protests. November 15, 2023, and they're referring to the Derek Chauvin motion to appeal his federal conviction. This murderous a-hole knows what he did Cops are so used to getting free passes for their conduct that he just can't get over being prosecuted. Rot in hell, dude. They create another false narrative to members of the community that police intentionally incarcerate children. December 26, 2023. This is ridiculous. Cops are constantly looking for new ways to suck even little kids into the criminal justice system. Judges shouldn't help them with it. And this is a case out of Mississippi, where a 10-year-old was offered probation for urination. But they don't mention that in their post. It makes it seem like this is a Minnesota problem, that cops want to incarcerate kids. Another time they posted about a case where the facts were yet not known, and they started lying, providing incorrect facts. February 1st, 2024. This man needed mental health services and assistance for dementia. Instead, they tased him to death without any facts being released. Again, this is the narrative that they're pushing. They post about specific staff at the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, calling them liars, clowns, which is unprofessional and again incites fear and undermines public safety. February 15th, 2024. Scott Mueller with the BCA is a big fat liar. And this is the clown that they have investigating police deadly force incidents. No wonder his investigations are stilted toward the clearing of cops. Falsely accusing of police breaking the law. The officer in this incident was found to be reasonable in his force. This is 2 years ago, February 2nd, 2023, Minnesota State Capitol Rotunda, first angel anniversary of Amir Locke. That was a case out of Minneapolis. Pay attention to Michelle Gross, Communities United Against Police Brutality, when she tells us of the complete failure of the Minnesota legislature to pass any kind of meaningful measures to rein in violent police or hold them to account. While many will be quick to point their finger at the Republican caucus, Michelle calls out the Democratic Party DFL leaders, such as Melissa Hortman, that chose to hold back bills that had already cleared committee, a huge hurdle in Minnesota, in holding from floor votes because they were more interested in holding their seats than doing the right thing for Minnesotans. That was then, this is now. The DFL holds every part of our state government, and they still have not managed to put forth any substantive bills to hold killer cops accountable. What's the excuse now? So not only do they go after law enforcement, they go after both parties of the legislature. Here's another unprofessional tweet, March 22nd, 2024. And this is in response to the Trooper Ryan Londrigan case when she had immense pressure of charging this case to begin with. March 22nd, 2024, again, we elected Mary Marty to do the job she is doing. Walz, Ellison, and all these outstate legislators need to shut the F up. More posts on how cops frequently lie. June 3rd, 2024. We are outraged that charges against killer cop Ryan Londrigan, who murdered Ricky Cobb II, were dropped. The reasons given by the county prosecutor are just plain BS. Cops frequently lie to claim they saw someone reaching for a gun when the video evidence doesn't show that. Claiming he was never taught to extract something from a moving car is asinine. Some things are just common sense. They also, in the Ryan Londrigan trooper case, accused the governor of colluding with the attorneys to deny justice, when the case was ultimately dismissed by several judges, again siding with criminal activity before the courts even determined justice. June 5th, 2024, Governor Walz collaborated with Londrigan's attorneys to deny the Cobb family justice. If you remember Officer Kim Potter's trial, And if you followed the closing arguments in that trial, the prosecution from the AG's office, Matt Frank, talked about the importance of Officer Potter, when this was all said and done, of how we could turn this into a positive. And one of those ideas was to have Officer Potter go out and train officers. And that's what she decided to do after her prison sentence. She wanted to give back. And if you've ever heard her speak, she took full responsibility in what happened that day. And she is very adamant about that and very apologetic and sorry. She has to live with that for the rest of her life. September 15, 2024, at best, Kim Potter is incompetent and a racist. She has no business training other cops. They also tell lies about police officers and what they said, spreading false information to defame police officers and breed distrust. August 7th, 2024. This is outrageous. Potter never expressed remorse for killing Dante Wright. In fact, she never even said his name throughout the trial, referring to him as the suspect the entire time. She has nothing to teach cops except how to get away with murder. And as I said, she has gone around and spoken about this and uses his name all the time. December 3rd, 2024. This is a case out of St. Paul. Bastard cop, I'll say that again, bastard cop Palkowicz, who savagely beat Frank Baker, thought he was going to skip out on 2 years of a prison sentence. Again, using inflammatory names towards law enforcement and the profession. Here's a December 2024 post about Minneapolis cops. They're all rude jerks. These are rude jerks who just got a 21.7% pay increase. In addition to these examples, the University of Minnesota has had some more troubling examples of partnering with anti-cop groups. A few months ago, the U of M paid another anti-police activist who spreads proven lies about police, Ms. Toshira Garraway, to go to New York and speak at the United Nations. I can't imagine a situation where it would be appropriate to fund that trip. This is a 2009 case out of St. Paul, where Ms. Garraway has testified in committees about that case of St. Paul police officers brutally killing her then fiance, having canine dogs bite him all over, and then throwing him into a trash dumpster. I have the complete case. I have the complete video. None of that is true. However, she's been allowed to come to this very body and make those claims. As I said, this case was 2009. The chief of police at that time was former Commissioner John Harrington. The investigating agent from the BCA was now Superintendent Drew Evans. The PIO, Public Information Officer of the St. Paul Police at that time, is now Commissioner Paul Schnell. The facts do not lie in that case. And I would be happy to provide not only the video of that day that shows Mr. Teagan fleeing police after a traffic stop, crashing his vehicle, and then hiding in a recyclable dumpster. It'll show the St. Paul Police searching for him, and a large thunderstorm comes through the area, so they call off the search. They resume search after the storm passes. Again, they used canine dogs, and near this trash recycling bin, so it's a large dumpster, was also trash dumpsters, you know how some restaurants have those big vats of used oil that they used, so a scent was never picked up. The theory is that he fell asleep, and shortly thereafter, the recycling truck came and picked up the recycling. They later found him in Invergrove Heights at the recycling center. The cause of death was asphyxiation from probably getting crushed. This police officer is still on the job today and has for the last 10 plus years been mocked, threatened, still to this day. When does it end? There have been a few incidents with the U of M students of taking a playbook directly from Communities Against Police Brutality on undermining and lying about the police, where MPPOA did media releases on these two examples that I'm about to give you. In February of 2021, U of M police received a call of a robbery and immediately investigated. They stopped to talk to a student who matched the suspect description and quickly realized he isn't part of the situation. The student, however, posts an incredibly factual, inaccurate account to social media and complains to the U of M regents on how he was racially profiled and harassed and immediately criminalized. He even starts an email campaign. Well, then when the body camera video comes out, it shows completely courteous and respectful exchange. This type of behavior by the student reacting to police is encouraged by Communities Against Police Brutality. This division against police using false statements and fabrications. Another example, in April 2021, a U of M student leader advocates for the illegal actions of disrupting and impeding the U of M police, such as swatting and impeding public safety work and making false 911 calls, wanting to make officers, quote, a living hell, and use up their resources. This is a recorded Zoom, and this is a student in a leadership role. This is a felony level crime and would lead to the loss of safety services on campus if that were to happen. These types of actions are clearly encouraged by organizations like Communities United Against Police Brutality. Law enforcement agencies are tasked with the duty of responding to emergency situations and in order to promote public safety. Everyone deserves to be safe, and advocating to impede police from assisting victims of crime is absolutely mind-boggling. And it's against the law. But it's from the playbook of Communities Against Police Brutality of spreading lies about police. Public safety officials in the University of Minnesota Police Department exist to protect and serve the community and work hard to earn the community and campus support. As I stated at the beginning, the U of M PD are members of my association, and I have many talks of what they deal with. We could sit here for hours and talk about the negativity that they're faced on a daily basis. And I want to commend them for the amount of respect that they have shown not only the university, but the students that they serve. What you saw the other day in Representative Novotny's public safety hearing, if I and my president, Shane Myrie, were able to get back on the microphone after being interrupted by vulgar protesters, what we would have said is welcome to a day in law enforcement. That's what our men and women who put on that shirt and badge every night face when they go out into the public. They don't put that uniform on to say, I can't wait to hurt somebody tonight or even kill somebody tonight. But Communities Against Police Brutality thinks otherwise and creates a false narrative and has for years. They're very good at pointing out problems, but very rarely offering solutions. Or their solution is no police. Can we imagine a world where we don't have the men and women out there protecting us right now in the frigid cold, being exposed to the vulgarity of many people? Think about that. In closing, law enforcement professionals dedicate themselves to ensuring the safety of all community members and strive to build positive, respectful relationships. It is truly disheartening that this organization is recognized for promoting the very opposite of those values. It's time that we have these conversations, and it's time that we get back to civility. We all expect it. We all expect it for our kids. We expect it for our students. We expect it for the faculty. We need to do better. An award like this encouraging that behavior, to me, is wrong. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee, and I'll take any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. I know we have some, and before I go to members, I just want to say this. As we've had this hearing and we've done this investigation, and I appreciate, of course, our staff is amazing to dive deep into this and to understand this long-standing, I'll say it again, a long-standing relationship, collaboration, co-opting of these students from the University of Minnesota into this type of activism is beyond the pale. What's come forward in this hearing is an abomination. The University of Minnesota should be ashamed of themselves for aligning themselves with an activist organization that perpetrates all of these lies, baseless accusations, inflammatory language against the very people that are trying to protect them. I could not be more disgusted right now with this collaboration, partnership. And the letter that I have in front of me from Michelle Gross says this 25-year organization, which of course she's not because they only started in 2020, throughout their history have worked with students from a number of schools, including the University of Minnesota. It's right there in black and white. It's right here in her schedule that's online. You can easily find it. Pillsbury Hall, there's a conversation happening today at Pillsbury Hall. One of the professors is a board member. This isn't just a community award. This is not just about a community award. This is about a systemic, inflammatory attack against law enforcement that are trying to protect the students of the state of Minnesota. I could not be more disgusted with what has come out from this hearing. I cannot believe that the University of Minnesota is aligned with a group like this and others apparently that teach our students this type of activism, this type of hate. I can only imagine people like then Chief Harrington, an esteemed law enforcement gentleman, and former Senator Paul Schnell, who is now Commissioner Schnell, Drew Evans, who is now the BCA superintendent, was characterized and disparaged by someone who was sent to the United Nations by the University of Minnesota. I don't even have words. I am so upset by this testimony. Members, I'm gonna turn it over. I'm sure Representative Novotny, you've got questions, and I hope they're really good ones because I'm literally in shock, Representative Novotny. I had no idea that when you asked your question, the depth that we would uncover today. Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Chair Eric. Actually, I don't have many questions because Mr. Peters covered almost every point that I was going to cover. I'll start off with a comment. I read the tweet, the X posting about Officer Potter calling her a racist, and having sat through her presentation and having the opportunity to meet with her post release from prison, for them to just call her a racist, knowing her background, knowing her family now. Just, if everyone gets called a racist for anything, it doesn't mean anything after a while. So thank you for addressing that. I, along with probably everyone else on this committee, I don't know if it's legislature-wide or just the committee, received numerous emails from people, and I'd pull it up, but I don't, saying that the MPPOA and Alpha News created this attack against this group. And Mr. Peters, you were a police officer for several years. And during the course of your law enforcement career, you've investigated cases, some involving probably some pretty severe violence, and had to write a report and testify in court. And you presented facts. Would you consider it an attack to report the truth? And I say that because when I looked into this community, this group also, everything I've saw is online. I don't think there's a thing you said or reported that wasn't publicly available. There's not some secret database that you went to. You Googled it, or you went to Twitter or X and it was right there. As you're aware, I sat through those presentations that you talked about where a lie was repeatedly told and was allowed to be told by the then public safety chair, knowing it was a lie, and repeatedly told and contradicted and pointed out that it was false. So yeah, it's a comment, it's a question. Do you consider it an attack to report the truth?
Mr. Peters.
Madam Chair, Representative Novotny, these are my words, but the facts are the facts. And this is just a drop in the bucket when it comes to Communities United Against Police Brutality. Just a drop in the bucket. As a former law enforcement officer and in my current position and even in life, the facts matter. And when groups like this are out there distorting the facts, creating a false narrative, attacking people personally, attacking people professionally, and allowed to continue that is wrong. And that's why I'm glad this hearing happened today. And as we've heard from the Safety Coalition, it's taken grassroots effort to make changes. And I've had conversations with the University of Minnesota, and I think we can all agree that it depends on who's in leadership. What matters is leadership. And I understand, and the professor talked about it, and I've talked to the U about it. There is new leadership, and I'm optimistic. But my ask is that look at the facts and ask yourself, in particular, is this a group you want exposed to our kids? Creating the false narrative, creating the lies, calling police officers murderers, racists, rotten hell, calling legislators on both sides to shut the F up. Is that where we've gone in our society? But to your question, Representative Novotny, these are facts, and everything that I have said today, I can give you a video, I can give you reports, and I can simply go to social media and use their words, not mine. But I am here as the executive director of the largest police association in the state to defend my rank and file members that go out and do this every day in spite of groups like this, that their sole purpose is to defame them and break down the profession. As long as I'm executive director, I'm not going to let that happen, ever, period. And these groups can come after me as much as they want. We're ready. And we will continue to fight for every single one of our members.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here, Mr. Peters, and to the you and to everybody that testified today. You know, I think I've served on this committee. This is going to be my third term. And since getting on this committee, we've heard about the problems with violence at the University of Minnesota campus, Twin Cities. And so it just seems like nothing was really being done by the university, maybe, and I don't know all the facts, until this, the parents and the local community got together and formed this coalition to try to advocate for safety on the campus. And part of the solution to all of this and having more safety on campus is building good relationships with law enforcement that are there. And the group that we're talking about today that received this award and others like it, the fact that they're able to be on the University of Minnesota campus and stirring up this kind of animus and hatred toward law enforcement is directly antithetical to what this group is trying to do to create safety on the campus. And why there has been so much consternation, even, you know, getting the previous president of the university to like publicly commend the law enforcement that they have there. And I hope that the university will look closer, will do more vetting of these organizations that they try to partner with and put before these young skulls full of mush, as they used to say, as Rush Limbaugh used to say, right? These young people who are their brains are still forming, right? They're not fully formed until 25. And so to put this sort of hatred and everything out there and the out and out lies, the out and out lies, that's really disturbing. And I know, and I don't know if it's still in existence, but back in the day, remember when we heard all about disinformation and all these college campuses were getting these departments that were supposed to deal with disinformation, and I looked up, University of Minnesota had such a department. I don't remember now what it's called. I could look it back up and see if it's still in existence. I think that it is. But they didn't look into this disinformation. They were very selective about the disinformation they looked into. And so, as Representative Novotny said, yes, there have been bad actors and will probably always be bad actors in whether it's the police force or any other line of work. But to categorize all of law enforcement, as this group seems to have done, is toxic to young people and their future and their safety. And I find it's disturbing. I hope that the university will look into some of this stuff and be more choosy about who they partner with in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Scott. Any other member questions or comments? Okay, Representative Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just getting back to Mr. Peters here, I was just wondering, when you talk to your members over at the UMPD, do they feel like they're turning the corner in terms of public safety over there, and they're kind of getting a better handle on what's happening over there at the University of Minnesota?
Mr. Peters.
Madam Chair, Representative Allen, I appreciate the question. They're optimistic with the new leadership coming in. You know, one example that I talked to that was being advocated by some of the activists a year or two ago was they wanted to take the guns away from the University of Minnesota Police. That's just ridiculous. And I think that the chief and the administration have a an up-road climb sometimes with the Board of Regents. And I know that Chief Clark does a very good job trying to navigate that. It's kind of like me reporting to a board. I have 13 different bosses. And, all my bosses are great, just for the record. But, in a culture like that, you deal with a lot of diversity, which is good. We should be able to have conversations and not draw that line in the sand or not point the finger at somebody is wrong or somebody is right. One of the things I enjoyed about attending the University of Minnesota is my classes were on the West Bank the majority of the time, but I would have to go over to the East Bank, and they have that long bridge. And when you walk that bridge, there's paintings from different organizations as you walk. And that always, struck me that here's a university that offers people to express what they believe in. And that's good. That's okay. It's when you cross the line, which, from my organization standpoint, this organization crosses the line 24/7, 365 days a week. They do not want cops. They're the type of group that throws a grenade in the middle of the group and walks away. Just creating problems with very little solution other than get rid of cops. I took this job in 2019, 10 months before COVID and some of these high-profile cases. I took this job because I saw an opportunity at a high level to help make this profession better. And for the last 5 years, that's been difficult because of organizations like this. But I'm still here. I'm still willing to fight. I'm still willing to be a part of the solution and not the problem. But it's groups like this that are the problem. And I appreciate this committee having these conversations. That's where it starts. I'm not one that's just going to throw a grenade in the middle of the room and walk away. I'm here because I believe that collectively, whether it's outside groups, whether it's the legislature, whether it's the U of M, there are solutions. But it also has to stop and call out groups like this that are not in the best interest of where we all believe we need to go. Did that answer your question, Representative? Sorry, I got off on a tangent.
Very good. Representative Allen.
Yes, and thank you for your answer. This is actually pretty personal for me because I graduated from the University of Minnesota in 2000. Previously served on the IFC board, judicial board, and the university is an amazing institution. There's just nothing better at campus. In the spring, when you get to see the maroon and gold flowers coming out of the ground, and in the fall, when even God loves the gophers and turns the trees maroon and gold. It's an institution worth protecting, and that's why everybody loves it as much as we do. It's a very unique place, especially the Twin Cities campus, where you have that beautiful collision of rural and urban. And thank you for the testifiers for what you said today. It's an institution worth protecting, and that means that you have to have public safety in place in order to be able to protect not only faculty and the critical research that's happening within those buildings and the institution, but also hopefully more alumni to join you and me in that regards. And if we have the right kind of environment, it protects everybody. We need to be leading in the right things in the Big Ten and not crime. And thank you for helping with that to everybody and helping protect this institution because it's a great place and a
It is.
resource.
Thank you.
Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Chair. Brian, I just had a comment. I was actually in the room that got disrupted, in the committee room that got disrupted. And the foul language, the vulgar that came out from the protesters. I was very unsettled. I've never heard anything like that. And the fact that they're a mere feet away from me and there was nothing that we could do. And I remember looking over at Chair Novotny, looking over at the Sergeant of Arms, going, what is going on? How is this continuing to happen? This has never happened to me before. I've never felt more like, I literally felt like a piece of garbage, and that's what they were trying to make me feel. And it wasn't for Chair Novotny just saying everything's going to be fine, everything's just, it's okay. When I later spoke to you after that, you said, this is very normal for us. This is an everyday thing. When I went back to my quarters, I was like, how could this possibly be normal? And you were like, and I was just remembering the conversation, like, they have their freedom of speech, they're allowed to do this. And I'm like, I've never been so disrespected in my entire life. And the fact that you say, this is very normal, we deal with this every single day. I don't know how that became normal. It shouldn't have ever been, but I just want to thank you so very much for all the service. I want to thank the testifiers today, the Safety Coalition, the mama that came and took the day off from work, wanting to ensure not only her family, but other students' safety. Richard, I thank you for your testimony as somebody who's working at the U of M. Again, thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Robbins, and we've got about 3 minutes left.
I'll be quick, Madam Chair.
Oh, it's fine.
I just want to thank you for your testimony and also want you to convey to your officers at UMPD and the Minneapolis PD how much they are appreciated by the students. The students I talk to in my district, the parents who have gone through carjackings and assaults with their students on campus, they have nothing but praise for how their student has been helped and the professionalism of the UMPD and the Minneapolis PD. And I know the campus safety culture is improving, and they are so grateful. So I just hope that one of the messages from today is that you hear from us as legislators, but also on behalf of the people in our districts, that they are deeply appreciated.
And Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I respond to
Mr.
Representative
Peters.
Robbins real quick? Thank you for that. And, you know, we're optimistic. We're more optimistic in this profession than we've ever been before. And it's conversations like this that expose groups that are a problem. And it reminds us to continue this conversation. This shouldn't be a one and done, because people are depending on it, lives are depending on it, and that's our job, and we'll continue to do our job. But it's people like yourselves that understand that and will help us get to where we need to be. And from all 10,000 plus members that I represent, you have our commitment on doing that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. So before we close, I just want to make sure there isn't anyone in the public that also wants to testify that haven't signed up in advance. Anyone from the public? Okay, seeing none, then I'll go to my closing, unless you have anything else, Mr. Peters.
No, Chair.
Very good. Any other members? Seeing none. Okay. I would urge, because I cannot direct the University of Minnesota, to look hard and deep at themselves and the relationships and the partnerships that they currently have, and is that really in the best interest of the student, of the community, of the state? I question, after hearing everything today, that they are making good choices in those partnerships and those relationships. So Mr. Peters and other testifiers, thank you for coming and sharing facts. And I always say, let's live in the land of fact and truth. I like to live on the lane of facts and truth, not accusations, inflammatory statements, direct lies, baseless things. And with that, we are adjourned.